we are with Ugur Mersin, strategy lead at API3. Ugur, it's so great to have you here on the Defiant. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our time.
Awesome. Yeah, no, me too. So API3 is an Oracle provider for crypto. Of course, as we know, Oracles are a key infrastructure piece for this industry to work. And there's a lot of competition in this space, each with their different approach to, on how to better bring data on chain. And so, yeah, interested to hear the basics on API3 and what makes it different, or I guess like in your view better than your competition.
Yeah, sure. So API3, maybe I start with oracles to begin with. Mm-hmm. So like the core premise of why oracles are needed to begin with is that blockchains in themselves don't have access to real world data. So basically imagine it as an isolated network. But if you want to build applications that, for instance, give out a loan on the basis of an asset, you kind of need to know what that asset is worth. Theoretically, you could use on-chain pricing for this, but most of the times it's like not liquid enough and manipulatable. So typically what happens is if we take the crypto venue, that there's prices, the liquid venues are centralized exchanges that are in the real world, but somehow that data needs to find its way on-chain. And there are various different ways how people do this. So one way is, for instance, that I could be just getting the price from Coinbase and then putting that on chain, and then dApps could use that. But there are several problems, like who am I? Why am I putting the data on chain? How can you trust me to do that? Then because I'm not, as a sole single person, not trustworthy enough, you just ask a bunch of it. So it could be you and I. We both ask Coinbase and then put the price on chain. But then basically, even though we're now two people, we still only trust Coinbase. So now it's you, me, maybe 5 others, and we ask Coinbase, Binance, and multiple other people. And this is in effect how roughly most oracles operate. What we do here is we call these third-party oracles, meaning that third parties like you, me, 5 other people, we are getting data from somewhere. It's not our own data. We're getting it from Coinbase, Binance, or others, and then we're putting it on chain for dApps to consume. What API3 does differently in this case is we don't allow anyone essentially to run these Oracle nodes. We don't allow third parties to run them. We go directly to the source. So we approach businesses like exchanges or like aggregators like CoinGecko, for instance, or Keiko, big players in the space, and make them run the Oracle nodes directly. So we're eliminating kind of this middle layer, which also creates verifiability. That is the core thing. I would say that API3 does differently. We're focused on first-partiness and verifiability. I think I'll make you a break here.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay, so interesting that you're removing that step, that intermediation. So what's in it for data providers to become, to participate in this Oracle system?
Essentially, they are the producers of the data. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, in most Oracle projects, they are actually not the beneficiary. So if you look at, for instance, most of the Oracle projects out there, they're actually only heavily incentivizing the people that are in the middle and bringing that data on-chain. But they're not the ones curating that data, processing that data, and making sure that it's like valid. So effectively, the incentive for these data providers or exchanges is like they do most of the work, so they should most likely get most of the money, because without them, nothing works.
So does that mean that data providers, say CoinGecko, will get a percentage of fees produced by the API3 network in exchange for them providing their data?
Essentially, in one way or another. We'll go into that in a later space. But yeah, like we essentially try to break down the intermediaries and make it so that the API providers like CoinGecko make the money directly and not some intermediary layer.
Interesting. Okay. And are these incentives fees that dApps or whoever is accessing that data pay? Or is there also a token that acts as an additional kind of reward mechanism in the network?
So the fees that essentially get distributed to the API providers is something that we call OEV. I'm pretty sure we go into that later. It's one of the core things that we developed in the last 1.5 years, a solution to recapture OEV. That's going to get very technical. So let me first, before that, break down this myth of fees being available. Oracles don't make any money providing data. None of them. May it be the big names, may it be the small names. The core issue is that this space has been subsidized for a very long time because essentially you wanted to make free data available to get as many customers as possible to show that you're securing the entire space, basically. So a lot of dApps, I want to say, developed this status quo that oracles is not something they pay for. And because this was initially done by the major projects, essentially getting someone to pay for something that was always free and is always going to be free is very, very hard, because it just takes another Oracle project to spin up, create a new token, and essentially subsidize it. Why would the dApp essentially start paying if there's multiple people giving it to you for free? So effectively, no Oracle currently has any mechanism to recapture money, because the moment they try, people are just going to switch to the next person that does it for free.
Okay, so what's your solution for this? What's OEV?
OEV stands for Oracle Extractable Value. It's a subset of MEV. I'm pretty sure everyone is pretty familiar with MEV. If you ever placed the swap on Uniswap and you got sandwiched, that's a form of MEV where you essentially get sandwiched. And similarly, Oracle transactions can effectively, let's say, cause MEV. Let's say an Oracle updates, and that leads to a liquidation on a platform like Aave. That Oracle update enables, for instance, like I said, the liquidation, and most often that liquidation has some type of reward tied to it. Like, for instance, if you liquidate somebody on Aave, you get a 5 to 20% of the collateral of the person you're liquidating as the liquidation bonus. So this Oracle update is now a lot more valuable than any other Oracle update, because it allows you to there's a number next to it. So if it's a 1 million position and you get 10% of it, that Oracle update is now worth at least 100,000. And the core issue, however, in the space is that every Oracle so far treats every update the same, even though it's not. Like, some updates have intrinsically more value than others. And what we built is essentially an auction that sells updates to the highest bidder and takes that money, takes a small cut of that money, and returns it back to the dApp. So instead of Aave, for instance, paying 100,000 to someone for that liquidation, they could get 90% of that, for instance, back and only pay 10,000, which drastically reduces fees.
Okay, but if there are these auctions that incentivize players to maybe update prices in a way that benefits them, is there a risk there that not the right market data is actually updated? Like, maybe. Yeah.
No, very good question. So effectively what we do is imagine a network of Oracle nodes, 10 Oracle nodes, and they maintain a certain price feed, let's say ETH/USD. What our auction does is it only allows you to get data from then those 10 nodes. So you win the right to get price information from those 10 nodes. You can't just insert any price you want. You essentially just get the right to pull the prices from CoinGecko, Coinbase, whatever, into the blockchain and bundle that together with what you want to do. For instance, if you win the right to update the Oracle, you can, right after the Oracle update, do the liquidation. Since you decide when the price is updated, you also decide when the liquidation happens. So now winning that right to the Oracle, like winning the right to update, is worth a lot of money. And this already, like, essentially auctions already happen in Ethereum on various levels. There's block space auctions. Right now, what happens typically on liquidations is, let's say, Aave currently uses Chainlink. Chainlink treats every Oracle update the same. So they update, and after their update, for instance, enables a liquidation, people actually already compete in auctions. They see Chainlink updated, they see they can liquidate someone, but now they're competing in block space auctions to get their transaction included first. And if there's 100,000 up for rewards, they're actually bidding 99.9% of that away to block builders, so their transaction gets included first. There was quite recently, yesterday during the market crash, the biggest Aave liquidation of the year, for 7.4 million roughly, and the reward for liquidating that position was $802,000. And the person that won the right essentially to liquidate bribed for roughly so much that they only had $80 left after. So wow. 800,000 as a reward, and the competition for that was so stark that they walked away with $80.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it's not frustrating. Essentially, like dApps are overpaying, I would say, and this makes it more evident that they're overpaying, because if someone is willing to do the job for $80, why are you paying them 800,000?
I mean, these price changes and liquidations and market moves happen in, I don't know, less than a second. How to predict that an Oracle update is going to be more valuable than others when these changes happen so quickly?
That's a good question. I mean, the general premise is that you more often than not know what the liquidation points of certain people are. Like, even though the Aave platform, if you take a loan, don't specify exactly at which price point you get liquidated, you can calculate it. So even though it doesn't look like, let's say, the Binance leverage trade where it exactly tells you at 2,000 ETH you're going to lose all your money, you can calculate based on the health factor what the price points are you need to liquidate people. And you can, in our system, bid in advance. So essentially you can say, if the price hits 2,000, give me the price update. And then once that condition is met, you get the update and you can liquidate that person. So this is not an effectively guessing game. You can pre-calculate almost all of this, and then you just need to be sure that when it happens, when you win the right to update, that you perform on that right.
Super interesting mechanism. And so, what are some of the stats, like the activity traction that you're looking at right now?
So we recently launched this basically 1 month ago, and right now I would say this is more on the people get to try it out in adoption phase. We have some early partners, and we have been liquidating on them. Basically, also yesterday, there was a lot of activity. I personally wouldn't say it's perfect yet. Some, essentially, I would say, important liquidations here and there were not recaptured. They still happened, but people effectively didn't bid for them. So the protocols were in no way, shape, or form in danger. Everything works as presumed, with the slight disadvantage that on some of these liquidations, money was not returned to them. And this is something that is going to be worked on in the next couple of weeks, months, to make these as efficient as possible, basically to reach the level that already happens in block space auctions in Ethereum. The ideal scenario is 99% return rate, so that these projects stop losing a lot of money. And it is very significant money. If you count the past 2 days, the major nuke that has happened, Aave has paid out 23 million in liquidation incentives. on 2 days.
Wow.
Then there's Venus on BNB chain that paid out 1.1 million. Compound paid out over 2 million, and this is on 2 days basically. And if you look at essentially what these protocols make over a year, this is significant amount of their revenue that this could be boosting.
And can you go through again how you will aim to return those funds to dApps?
Yeah, effectively, we have our OEV network, which is a layer 2. That layer 2 sells the rights to update specific oracles on a specific chain. Let's imagine you win the right to update ETHUSD on Arbitrum. And once you win the right, what you win on the OEV network is a transaction that you can take to Arbitrum and update. But in that transaction included is also how much you bid to win that update, essentially. And you're only able to update the Oracle if you also transfer the money to the dApp. So basically, it is an immediate transfer of value. You're only able to get, let's say, the liquidation reward if you transfer the money that you said you will for the Oracle update. And we are in no way in between there. The only thing we're doing is we're giving people the right to update if they pay. And if they don't pay, on the OEV network, they have a stake there. They essentially get slashed to disincentivize misbehavior, so that you just don't bid and never execute on your bids. You effectively put up collateral in order for you to be able to, behave honestly.
Right. Super interesting. And I know you just launched, but who are your initial how do you integrations, or which steps are using API3 for now?
So initially it has been dApps that we have been working together with for a long time. On Mantle, for instance, there's Init Capital and Lendl. There on Blast, we have protocols like Juice and Orbit and Peg. Those are essentially all of the lending protocols almost on Blast. And we have effectively right now talks with a lot of the bigger protocols. I don't want to name drop. There's governance posts out there where this is being discussed. And effectively, the general idea here is there is a lot of money on the table. There's numerous people that try to essentially recapture that money. And it's right now just a matter of time until protocols are forced to do something about it. If you look at, for instance, Aave made a post about this yesterday, that they made 6 million in liquidation fees. There's a slight fee that Aave gets anyway, and that resulted in 6 million. But what nobody essentially talks about is that they missed out on 23 more. So instead of having 29 million, they only got 6 million. And I think we are now reaching a phase where DeFi protocols can't get away with simply existing anymore. They're being asked to make money. People invest in them because they're cash flow positive. And essentially, it turns a little bit into why you own stocks, right? You want your business to be profitable, and businesses will look for ways to become more profitable for their stakeholders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So right now it's such a incredible stress test for you in this volatile market, and you said you have been reviewing how the protocol worked in Monday's crash. What lessons have you taken away from this, and what are kind of the next milestones that you're looking to launch, or things that you're looking to improve going forward?
I think basically the good part is, it's a layer 2 where the auction takes place, and this was the first crash that happened while that layer 2 was essentially live. So a good thing to note there is that everything worked. Our layer 2 didn't die. The auctions happened how they're supposed to, and that is a very, very good thing, because one thing that people always ask is what happens when this thing is gone, and how do I get data? And the good part there to note is this auction is just on top of our regular data feeds. So even if the layer 2 would be gone, the data is still being pushed onto the chain in the regular way. But it's still good to know that even though everything nukes, gas goes insane, it just is up and running. The other thing I think that we are going to work more on our partners with our partners is like finding ways to identify, make sure that all opportunities are identified. One thing that happened, I would say, that could be done in a more ideal way is someone saw a position that they can liquidate. They bid for the update to liquidate. And once somebody wins, they have the right for that data feed for like a minute. And they effectively, after that, missed, for instance, that there was a second position that they could also get. So we need to work with people to be aware of like every position that one single update might be able to perform. So you essentially only liquidated one instead of 2, 3, 4 in one go. And these are essentially lessons that now it's basically time to optimization. We saw everything is up, everything survives the stress test. Now it is about getting maximum traction and maximum value return to the dApps in the next couple of weeks and months.
Awesome. I'd love to get also a brief background on yourself. Like, how did you come to crypto? What led you to API3?
Yeah, that is always a weird story. I have the feeling it's the same for almost everyone. So I was basically studying in Sweden. I was in the process of writing my master thesis, and this is going to sound a bit weird, but I was very bored. We had to read a lot of articles, and I really needed some distraction. And a friend of mine back then essentially sent me the Bitcoin white paper, and this was late 2019. From there, I kind of fell down this rabbit hole that everybody keeps speaking about. From there, you reach Ethereum, from there, and so on and so on. And it took basically a couple of weeks, and you were on Uniswap, essentially shitcoining immediately. And it's basically after I finished my studies, a close friend of mine worked with one of the co-founders of API3 back in the day on some other thing, and he made me aware of it. Essentially, in the beginning, I was just an early investor in API3, but after my studies, I had so little to do and they were looking for people that I was just like, yeah, might as well. I have the time. I didn't write any other applications, and I just straight jumped into this.
Nice. And what were you studying?
Strategy and management, and before that,
okay.
kind of like computer science.
Okay, cool. So right now, like everyone gets into crypto with some sort of idea of what this new financial system should look like, or the goals that it should achieve. And like we discussed in the beginning, oracles are such a key part of it. For you, how important is it for oracles to be decentralized, or like how far in the decentralization spectrum should there be? Is it okay for them to be somewhat centralized at some point, or like how do you see the trade-offs there for oracles themselves?
I mean, right off the bat speaking, unfortunately, people currently don't give as much value to decentralization as I wish they would. Nearly all oracles that are out there are in effect multisig controlled. Basically, all of them, with the slight like there's only one exception. And for the sake of not name dropping, I'm not name dropping, but most of the oracles that secure most of the TVL around the space are basically just a glorified multisig. And that is very sad to see, because that kind of already breaks down what I would define as decentralized. If you have a dApp and you call that dApp decentralized, but effectively rely on a single company for your data, I would question if you are decentralized. This becomes also very hard when it comes to oracles per se, because one core reason why there are multisigs is oracles are not something static. You need to sometimes change the data sources. You need to essentially, these things need to be reconfigured slightly often. And that makes it hard to have something truly decentralized, because as you might see, decentralization is very messy. It takes time, but you don't have time when it comes to oracles. When let's say you have 15 nodes and 6 of them start misbehaving or something is wrong, you need to immediately make a switch, and you can't put it up for vote, wait 3 days and hope that the majority doesn't go bonkers. You need to make a switch immediately. So I understand why things are leaning more centralized, but if that is the case, I feel like dApps need to take better precautions. There are only a handful of dApps that have attempted, for instance, multi-oracle systems. There's Venus on BNB chain that actually uses 3. Liquidity got pretty famous with their dual oracle approach. They used Chainlink and Teller. And I feel like if you have such a centralized component in your system that can decide basically life and death, you need to make sure that you have a backup, at least.
That's fair enough. And how do you approach it at API3? Do you also control your parameters with a multisig?
Yeah, so effectively at API3, it's quite similar. All of the data, what you consume on chain is visible and verifiable. So when the prices come from CoinGecko, you see that. We made sure that the system can be checked by anyone. But at any given time, obviously, the multisig can change where a data feed points to. The vision in the future is that all of these providers are publishing their own data where you can get it verifiably directly from them, and then build your own data feed however you want. Let's say you don't like Coinbase, you don't want Coinbase, so you only pull from Binance, CoinGecko, and so on. So you essentially, what we're trying to ultimately, this should lead to is that data sources are used in Web3 like they are used in Web2, where you buy an API subscription and now you use that data for your website or whatever. But right now, what most oracles do is they build which data sources you use, and you don't have any ability to utilize data that is not controlled by someone, or utilize data where you select where the data comes from. And this is where things need to go to in the future, where every single API that exists in the Web2 world is also available in the Web3 world, and then you mix and match to how you want, defined by your security standards or whatever.
That's super interesting. So is there a timeline for that update, or is that still kind of way far off?
I would say something drastic needs to happen in the industry for people to want this. Everybody seems to be happy relying on multisigs currently, and I think at some point in the future, something will break that will force people to want more control over this.
Interesting. Okay, so you're saying you don't see enough demand right now to make that change.
Yeah, essentially, people. We learn through pain, as weird as this sounds. So when something, I mean, a lot of the DeFi hacks nowadays, the trivial ones don't happen anymore, and that is because people suffered through them and they learned their lesson and they adopted and got better. And I believe this is also something like a lot of the things that are centralized tend to break at one point or another. May that be the FTX collapse or whatnot. Like, things tend to break and people draw lessons out of them. I know a lot of people that had money on FTX. After that, they haven't touched a centralized exchange ever again. And I feel like in the same way, people are going to get hurt, which will draw them to solutions that mitigate that future problem in the future. And this solution doesn't necessarily even have to be, let's say, a quote-unquote fully decentralized Oracle solution. It could just be that you build a system that utilizes multiple oracles and has checks and balances in place to protect you from one of them misbehaving.
Makes sense. Okay, so for you, long term for API3, what does success look like? Like, what would the ideal situation for the protocol be, say, I don't know, 3-5 years from now?
3-5 years, that's basically 5 decades in crypto.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can look that far into the future. I know what we want to achieve in the next year. Currently, most oracles currently just provide data, and providing data is currently like that's the bare minimum you have to do. Like if you everybody expects you to provide data, and that for that data to be correct. Like if you say we provide data, there's like it's meaningless basically. Like that's what everybody expects. Like that's like booking a flight and getting from A to B. But people essentially, like, why do people, for instance, book, let's say, Turkish Airlines and not some cheap a carrier to fly somewhere? Because they expect something a little bit more. And currently, basically, no Oracle has that bit more, whereas we try to do that with the OEV network. We turned oracles into, we give you data, plus we pay you for using us, which nobody else currently does in any meaningful way. So not only can we provide you with whatever asset prices you might want on whatever chain you might operate on, but whenever there's opportunities for OEV on your protocol, you actually get most of the money back if there's sufficient competition for that. And that is effectively unique from an Oracle standpoint. Nowhere else can you just consume a Oracle and get paid in the process of doing so.
Super, super interesting. And it makes a lot of sense, tying to what you were discussing earlier. DeFi is growing up, and it's not enough to just exist and, innovate and, provide some on-chain financial service. Like, it actually needs to work. Like, it needs to make financial sense. There needs to be a business model behind it. So,
I mean, if you have a token behind it, I would say so. Yes, the token needs to have meaning.
I mean, but it's not so obvious, right? Like, you would think that's like the bare minimum, like in Web 2 or kind of TradFi. Yeah, if there's stock and equity in a company, you expect that company to be actually providing value, to have some sort of revenue, hopefully some profit, to have users. But that is far from the norm in crypto, unfortunately.
I mean, it was also, I would say, a bit tricky regulatory-wise. You weren't sure if you are allowed to return money to your stakeholders because the SEC was waiting around the corner ready to sue you because you're effectively acting like a registered security, but you're not. But right now we're seeing effectively a lot more talk of that. The regulatory scene. I can also speak of that internally. Our legal counsel has been a lot more chill in the last year because there has been a lot of movement regulatory-wise, and you see a lot of protocols actually putting emphasis on becoming profitable. Aave recently pushed this update where they're turning the fee switch effectively, and that is a very bullish case for us because this means that DeFi protocols effectively turn into, I would say, businesses, and businesses typically strive to profit maximize. And if there's this huge chunk of money that you're letting, basically flip away, or like that you're losing out on, we can make an argument of making your business 5 times more profitable very easily.
Absolutely, and I think that's super bullish. But at the same time, most of the activity we're seeing in crypto right now is just meme coin trading. So how does that fit into your model?
Yeah. That is a very good question. I mean, I'm more than likely the wrong person to ask because when it comes to, I believe in the one of the Ethereum core devs kind of made a similar post in recent days, and I emphasize a lot with that. Somehow, I believe in all of this being used and all of it going up monetary wise. I'm not so sure if over the years I still believe in the core ethos, unfortunately. We seem to, along the way, have lost something, because everyone kind of is more than not currently focused on the price movement. I don't see people innovating. I see people taking shortcuts, even if that means to centralize for the sake of getting the product out fast and making money. And I still believe that there's people out there that sincerely build something that is going to revolutionize the world. But unfortunately, the more I worked in crypto, I slowly flipped from, I was bullish ETH because I was excited about what people can build on top of ETH. And the more time passes and the more I see what people build on ETH, the more I become a Bitcoin maxi, because people don't build on it and there's no human influence on it, basically.
But now that's changing too. Now there's, L2s on Bitcoin and NFTs.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see where it goes.
So, yeah. In any case, I think even if like there's a lot of noise and shitcoins and all of that happening and, hype, I believe, as you were pointing out, there's also like this valuable core in crypto, these DeFi protocols providing value. And I think it's great that you are making those businesses more efficient. So yeah, super excited to see how you continue growing.
Yeah. Same. I think funneling, having the ability to funnel more money towards the honest builders in the space might actually eventually lead to something that benefits the greater good. That is my core belief.
Amazing. Love it. I think that's a great place to end the interview. Thank you so much, Ugur. This was super interesting.
Thank you so much for your time.